So let me start by welcoming you both and welcoming all the people that have come to join us. And having done a little research and checked out a few things, I've got a little bit of a background on Debra, which she has approved. So I will share a little of her personal information. And I'm afraid the other one I've got is not quite as detailed as I have got for you, but never mind. We've managed to get a little bit of information, Artur, about where you came from and what you've been doing in your past. So Debra is the co-founder and the CEO of the Together Plan charity and founder of the Brest Jewish Cultural Education Foundation in North Belarus, a passionate advocate for support of the Jewish people and communities in the former Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. She spent years traveling Eastern Europe and reading books on Eastern Europe, 20th century history and the Holocaust. And her grandparents came to the UK as Polish Jewish immigrants in the late 1920s, speaking only Yiddish. Relatives who remained in Poland perished in the Holocaust. Her mother became a Yiddish singer. She married the son of a Hungarian Holocaust survivor who came to the UK as refugees fleeing the communist uprising in 1956. Holocaust trauma contributed to her marriage breakdown. When she discovered Belarus, she felt a real and powerful connection. Here was a country that had a rich and untold Jewish history and communities who needed to find their way back to Judaism post-communism. The Together Plan, which we're going to hear about today, was born out of a twinning between Finchley Reformed Synagogue in London and the Polotsk, and I'm sure I'm not pronouncing it correctly, Jewish community in the north of Belarus. This community project was started by Debra as a volunteer in 2009, and the focus of the project was to share skills with community members in Polotsk and in some way help them to learn how to help themselves. There were many challenges, and it became clear that there were also other communities in Belarus in need of support, some Reform, some Orthodox, some secular, with many disconnected Jewish people and no community at all. In 2013, Debra and Artur, based in Minsk, registered the Together Plan with the UK Charities Commission, and the charity made it possible to reach out to more communities and develop programs to engage and support on a wider level. The FRS Belarus project has maintained its strong support to this Jewish community. Joining Debra from Minsk, now you'll have to help me pronounce your last name because I'm not sure I can. Artur, no, you're not going to help me. Livshyts.
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 It's quite.
It's easy for you, but it's difficult with my Australian accent. I'm sorry. You were also, not only you calling us from Minsk, but you were also born in Minsk. You spent 2 years living with a relative in Nashville in Tennessee, and it was there as a child of the Soviet Union that you discovered Judaism, studied Hebrew, had a bar mitzvah, and was your first foray into Jewish life. You spent a year living in a boarding school in Israel before returning to Belarus, where you completed your education in Minsk, studying human rights law. Having had a taste of Jewish life, you made it your life's work to strive for a revival of the Jewish community in Belarus. In 2009, you and Debra met and together have worked to build and grow the Together Plan. And today we're going to hear about one of the projects that you've been working on. Thank you both so much for joining us.
So thank you for inviting us. It's a real privilege to be here, and to Danny for also inviting us to write in Kosher Koala, and we feel, you know, it was really great to be able to do that. I haven't put Artur on the billing because I wasn't sure whether he would be with us at all a week ago because he's just got over a very bad bout of COVID. Here he is, and I'm very pleased. So Artur, you can sit back. He features quite a lot in this, as you will see. He being the man on the ground, so you're going to see quite a lot of him in this, and then you can ask him questions at the end. I think all your questions will probably be directed to him. This talk is focusing on the Brest-Litovsk Jewish cemetery, and we've said unlocking the past, which you will see why. Just to say that the Together Plan is a charity that is essentially preserving the past and building the future, saving the history and heritage of Jewish Belarus for future generations, future communities. you'll see why. I'll come back to that in a minute, towards the end of the talk. This is a picture of, well, these are pictures of the Brest-Litovsk Jewish cemetery. For those of you who don't know, I'm sure you all do know, the cemetery, or the Brest, is in the south of the country. It used to be Poland, and it's a fascinating part of the world. Very important is where the Brest-Litovsk treaty was signed, taking Russia out of the First World War. So it's got an immensely complex history and very complex Jewish history as well. As you can see, it was a very richly stocked cemetery. It was very big, yeah, as you can see, a slightly colorized picture as well. But the cemetery is no longer there. When I say that, the actual cemetery is there. It's still a cemetery, it's hallowed territory, but there's nothing to mark it as a cemetery. Today it is a sports ground. It's called the Locomotive Sports Stadium, which is rather ironic because it was locomotives that took all the Jews away to have them killed. That is a picture that I took about 4 years ago. There is nothing there to mark it. There is a perimeter wall, which you can sort of see here, goes all the way around. Nothing on the wall to say this was once a Jewish cemetery. This is not unique to Brest. This is a story that you find across the whole of the Soviet Union, or former Soviet Union. It happened to many cemeteries. But we'll go into greater detail of what's happening there now. There's a very wonderful man there called Vladimir Gubenko, who has written a book and written a book called Brest of My Memory between the 1930s and the 1960s. He was not an artist, but he started to with some friends and colleagues, they were trying to recall what happened there from the 30s to the 60s. And there were many people who had either witnessed atrocities or who remembered, or he himself who had witnessed atrocities. He left Brest during the war and then came back. And he started to put some of these images, either from other people's memories or his own, on paper, and found that he was producing pictures such as this. And his book is an incredible book with amazing imagery. So where photographs don't exist, he has created the story. This is a picture of Cossacks who were serving the Germans, robbing the Jewish graves in the cemetery in 1943. So this was already the start of the destruction of the cemetery. And then you can see that Germans cleared the cemetery to install sound detectors. So again, more removals of headstones to clear the way. By the way, Vladimir's grandson, Leo Levine, is part of the Together Plan. He's working on a Holocaust education program with me. So we have a really close connection to Vladimir. This was a picture that was taken, I think it was in 2014 when Artur first took me to Brest to see headstones that had been collected all around the area. And they were just dumped under this part of the Brest fortress. There's this huge fortress there. And under the arches of the fortress, which is really a storage area, the authorities had said you can just put them here because people were finding them. People were finding them all over the region, and you can see some piled up here and bits here. So they were just being dropped off here. But as you can see, it was terrible. Lots of rubbish and people just dumping things here, and it was a very macabre sight, I have to say. And I said to Artur, we really need to kind of, do something about this. If not, get them all stacked up, ordered, something needs to be done. I'm not going to go into the whole sort of long story. We can do that afterwards if you want to. But the person who was sort of dealing with the management of collecting these headstones was doing it, but it wasn't the best run. It wasn't being done in the greatest way, but at that point in time, we had to work with that person. I'll come back to that, but here, this photograph here on the left is an image of the Felix Warburg colony. Felix Warburg was the chairman of the Joint Distribution Committee in the 1920s, the American Joint Distribution Committee. The local Brest community was in a state of I mean, it was in a terrible state. It was post World War I. There were thousands of Jewish orphanages. Many Jews had been killed during the war. A lot of Jewish people were hauled up in the synagogues. They were homeless, and the Joint Distribution Committee came and found the conditions and put a lot of money into building the Felix Warburg colony, which you can see here on the left. And there were orphanages here where a lot of the children were homed. And then to fast forward to the Second World War, the Germans arrived, and this area was Poland. The interwar years was Poland. The Germans arrived and killed the Jews, killed the orphanages, killed the orphans, and it turned the area into a prisoner of war camp, or actually basically was a place where they put Soviet soldiers and then before they killed them. After the war, it was turned into, when the Soviets then pushed back, they turned it into a German prisoner of war camp. So it's got a bit of a story. Fast forward to 2015, here's Artur walking through what was left of the colony, and we basically saw these houses being demolished. We really wanted to save one of them because we felt it was terribly important to have it as a part of the Jewish history. And at one point we almost got the approval to save one of them, but it didn't happen, sadly. We have a lot of photographs of them being destroyed, but this is a very important piece of history that we were watching being lost. And this is the, as you can see, Vladimir Gabenko's picture of the period when the colony houses were being used as the German prisoner of war camp, and the Soviets were ordering the German prisoners to remove the remains of the headstones from the cemetery and laying them down in front of the buildings because they had a huge sanitation problem. So this was a way of dealing with it. So yeah, no Jews, they're all gone, so we'll use their materials, their headstones, to solve our sanitation problem. So this was an amazing picture that he penned. So now fast forward again to 2015, and this is the area of the Warburg colony where Artur and I took these photographs of headstones just being found on the demolition site. And all of these headstones we paid for to have them moved over to where they were being stacked very sensitively under the arches of the Brest fortress. So here's a picture of them. It was a building site. They were digging foundations for a supermarket on the territory that had been the Warburg colony. And we had a call from, I happened to be there. I was in Brest when this happened, and they said, could you come? We understand that you're collecting these headstones that we've found a lot. And these had all been bulldozed to the side of the construction site. And as you can see, it's not the sort of thing you really would expect to see of matzevot. So here they are now under the arches of the Brest fortress, and they had been carefully stacked up. We said Kaddish, we'd lit candles, and we'd been there several times to get the measure of the situation. This is Stephen Greinberg. Now he's an American. His father survived. He's one of they say that 11 Jews survived out of the 26,000 that were in the community. And he's a filmmaker in Los Angeles. He asked us to hire a film crew in Belarus because he is trying to make a film to piece together the story of his family and his losses. And he had over 70 members of his family were murdered in Brunner. They were taken from Brest, put on trains, and taken to an area called Brunner, which was a killing site, where over 50,000 Jews were murdered, including the Jews of Brest, the Jews of Kobrin, the Jews of Pinsk, and the surrounding villages. So his father was a 10-year-old child who survived in hiding with his with his grandparents. So they were three of the few that survived. And he is supporting this project to memorialize the Brest-Litovsk Jewish cemetery. And this is the area, sort of the southern area of the stadium. So this is the, as you can see, this is the fence that you saw in the other picture. And this area was also cemetery. There are bodies buried here, as you would never know. It's just shrubland now, and the local authorities have said that they will allow us to create some form of memorial here using the headstones. So this is the site that it's, yes, the memorial that we're planning is destined to go to. And this is me standing on that site, taking a picture, looking away from it. So you can see it's in need of a little bit of attention. But what the authorities have said is that they will deal with the paving of the roads. And, you know, if we deal with the memorial and the site, then they will take on the local infrastructure, which hopefully will bring up the quality and and people will come, and it will encourage, you know, some sort of sense of pride in the local area. So this is this is 2020. This was just before the pandemic hit. This was me visiting. We were making a film. There's the short film. I'm happy to send you afterwards. I'm not showing it in this presentation, but you can share it with people of us taking the local community, because what had happened was the person who had been collecting the headstones suddenly lost them. The local authorities wanted to reclaim the area under the Brest fortress. They had plans for it, and they asked for that person to have the headstones, and by now we were talking a lot of stones, have them moved somewhere else, and this person refused to do it. And so Artur called me at the end of 2019 and said all of the headstones have disappeared. And I was, where have they gone? And the person that had collected them was being quite difficult, and it was really hard for us to try and make the point that we were trying to, you know, consider building a memorial or doing something with the local community, but they disappeared. So Artur, being Artur, went on his detective hunt and found them. He said they're in a warehouse outside of Brest. I said, I don't want to come, I want to see them. So this was me jumping on a plane, flying to Belarus, I said, let's take a film crew, let's capture this on film, but also let's take the local community. There is a local rabbi there who, and a community, an Orthodox community, who had no idea where they'd gone. They were very upset. And so we took them, well, it was Artur, who took with the local authorities, who took us to this warehouse where they'd all been moved to. The local authorities had basically picked them all up and taken them and put them in a warehouse. Thank goodness, because we thought they'd just gone and dumped them somewhere. But they had them. They hadn't moved them particularly sensitively, but they had moved them and they were there. So you can see that on the short film that we made. So this was us having this sort of conversation with them in the local authorities office to say, you know, what next? So what next was that we got back in touch with Stephen Greinberg. We said we found the headstones and we think that we might be able to seal a deal with the local authorities to get an exclusive agreement to move this forward, but we need your support. And he said, no problem, you've got me. Artur, I think, well, it's a 4-hour drive down to Brest from Minsk and 4 hours back. Artur must have, I think he's worn tracks into the motorway between Minsk and Brest because he went there so many times to try and seal the deal. It was not easy. Doing anything bureaucratically in Belarus is not the one, but Artur, if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be Artur. And he did it, and we sealed the deal. We signed the exclusive agreement, I'm very, very pleased to say. And so thankfully, they're now in our care. So this is now Artur in the summer. As you can see, he's got shorts on, it's hot. And I have to say, you're very brave, Artur, because I know how many things bite you in those grasses. So I'd doing that, but you're hardened. So this is meeting with the local authorities, local architect at the site to talk about potential for what a memorial might look like. And then this is now the warehouse where they are. All of the headstones were sorted, piled onto the crates. There was a huge amount of work that went into it, and every single one of these pieces is, I can't even begin to tell you how heavy these are. So physically, it's an impossible task to describe, but this is just some of the headstones. There are over 1,200 pieces there. And what they've done is that, as you can see, some are broken, well, a lot of them are broken, but there are a few that are still fully formed and reread. But over the summer, we had a team who did a whole piece of photographing every piece. You can see on a special grid. They're all numbered, so we're creating a photographic catalogue that will be made public. And Yuli here is our specialist who is reading the stones now. So all of the pieces have now been read or photographed, and are currently now being read to form an online catalogue which will be made available. So just to take you through these pictures, so we had some students who came in from the local college who helped to bring every single piece had to be put onto the grid, photographed, numbered, and it took weeks. Artur can tell you more about it. It was a mammoth task. This is Yuli, who also got involved, and you'll see a picture of the guy, says Artur here with Yuli, sort of looking and reading some of the pieces. Every piece tells you something. So for example, even the images at the tops of the headstones will tell you something, as you know, you're genealogists, so I don't need to tell you. So everything tells a story. So as Yuli said, every piece is something. So even where we've got tiny pieces and they've tried to salvage everything, we're going to try and piece some picture together. Once Yuli has done his piece of work, we'll then be able to sort of step back and say, well, what's it telling us? So you're the first people to see this. No one's seen these apart from us. So I literally selected a few out of the 1,200 to give you an idea, but some absolutely fascinating headstones. I mean, really quite interesting. I mean, there's thousands, over 1,000. So it was hard to sort of know which ones to pull out, but some need cleaning, just everything tells a story. But we're really beginning to see the measure of it, and really none of us have been able to sort of see each piece separately. They've all just been piled up and dumped and dredged out of waters and all sorts of things. So now we're really beginning to get a picture. So more to follow on that. So here I just want to say, this is the picture that we took on the end of, I think, day one of sorting. You can see they're absolutely filthy, drenched, because it was incredibly hot in this warehouse, and this warehouse is a ropey old warehouse. There's no, even I think on the first day they had no light. The electricity went out in the local area, and Artur had to source a generator so that they had some light. I mean, it's pretty pokey, but they worked their backsides off. And
just to say, Debra, the weather that period was really hot summer. It was around 35 degrees, and the humidity is like 90%. So in the warehouse, even hotter than outside. So you can imagine it took us to. So I mean, we kickstarted, and basically it took us probably a month plus a week to sort everything, to take photo of every piece, and because it's been just like a huge sort of garbage warehouse where we had to surf through all the pieces of the headstones. Anyway, I'll let Debra continue.
Yeah, so you'll see when I'll send you the other film that we made in 2020. You'll sort of get the measure of the state of everything. So it's been an extraordinary task what they've done here, and these two people are from the local authorities. So people really are stepping up. And the kids who came from the college are not Jewish. So it's really pulling people together to support this piece, this story that really is Brest's story, and it needs to be told. So the story made it to national news in Belarus. So I'm just going to show you this very short clip that was on the news in Belarus.
Спустя 80 лет забвения в Бресте началось строительство лапидария. Экспозиция старинной письменности на камне появится на месте старинного еврейского кладбища, снесенного в начале Великой Отечественной войны.
נפטר י"ב מנחם אב, תר"ל ד', לפרט קטן, תהיה נפשו צרורה בצרור החיים.
Специалисты изучают, документируют и фотографируют надгробия около 1000 мацев, предположительно с одного некрополя. В начале войны, когда Брест был оккупирован, фашисты расправлялись не только с евреями, но и с их памятью. Самое старое и большое кладбище в городе разграблено, а потом вовсе стерто с лица земли. Надмогильные плиты использовали для мощения улиц. Спустя много лет их обнаружили и передали представителям общины. С инициативой вернуть мацевы на место и построить мемориал выступила общественность и потомки евреев Бреста.
Уничтожение кладбищ, в том числе нацистами во время Холокоста, это было обычной тематикой. И, к сожалению, долгие годы мы не смогли восстановить ту справедливость и вернуть камни, и вернуть кладбище в какой-то первозданный вид. Поэтому на сегодняшний день есть решение таких проблем. Это возможность строительства мемориала, который будет посвящен не только людям, которые похоронены на этом кладбище, но и всему наследию нашей страны, потому что еврейское наследие Беларуси – это часть наследия всей Беларуси.
Это будет первый лапидарий в стране. Проект в 3 этапа. После изучения надписи займутся дизайном будущего комплекса. Концепцию согласуют с еврейской общиной и городскими властями. Чтобы завершить работы, специалистам понадобится около 3 лет.
So it's I'm very reassured that it made it to the news. So yeah, that's great news. So next steps, as I said, we are now in the stage of reading and translating. Yuli is doing that. We're creating a digital catalogue so that everybody will be able to see what's there and what's been able to be read. So being made public. Then there's a piece of work that's now going to be done to design the memorial, because the reason that everything was on a grid was to be able to show the size of every piece, so that a designer will be able to work out what they've got there, what the sort of the extent of the materials. And we're talking to Stephen Greinberg in the States about that. So that's the stage we're about to go into. And we're applying for local permissions, which Artur is dealing with. And then the landscaping will be done with religious guidance. We've already spoken to the chief rabbi of Belarus and to the local rabbi about that. So there's a piece going on because, of course, it's still a cemetery. So, putting matzevot, or in the form of a memorial onto this land is complex, and so that has to be respected. And then there'll be the building and the installing of the memorial. So we're well on our way. Everything's going well now, after several years of having to deal with all the sort of bureaucracy and the local people who were sort of not looking after the headstones. But so there's a whole book to be written there, but yeah, it's quite amazing. So just to sort of show you a little bit about what's there at the moment, the community, the local Orthodox community, meets at the Egdesh Synagogue, which was built in Egdesh Synagogue, built in 1884. It was a Jewish hospital synagogue, and after World War II, it was nationalized by the Soviets, and a Soviet cultural club was set up in the building. And during the Perestroika period, it was sold to a private owner and rented out to a Baptist church. And several years ago, the Chabad movement bought the building for use by the Brest Orthodox Jewish community today. And there's a picture on the right, as you can see, a drawing which is on the wall inside the building that shows what it once looked like. So, recently reclaimed building, which is very, very exciting, I have to say. This is the choral synagogue that once stood in Brest. A beautiful building. The building is still there, but you would never know it because it's now wrapped by a cinema. So as you can see, if I go back one, you can see the shape of the building. Yeah. So the walls of that building are now the what makes the cinema. Artur and I've been into this building many times. You can walk around the sort of promenade outside it. And until recently, there was nothing there to say that it was a synagogue, but the local Chabad rabbi, who is now in the Egdesh synagogue, campaigned to have this plaque put on the outside of the building. So it says, you know, this building housed a large choral synagogue until 1939. It was built in 1861 and funded by the Jewish community of the city. The building was renovated in 1976. So it's, you know, the authorities are not stopping these buildings being marked now. It's just a case of, you know, if you come up with the money, do the research, you know, it's possible, which is reassuring. So Artur and I were there, I think this was in 2016, or so, yes, in 2016, and we were doing a little tour, walking around with Efim, who is our archivist, member of the local community at the Egdesh synagogue, and this building was under a scaffold, and he took us into, he said, go inside the scaffold. We found it sneaked in, and here they were taking off they were restoring the building, and they'd taken off the plaster, and they were going to replaster it, and they discovered some very important writing, which you can see here, zoom in. So it's in Polish and in Yiddish. You can see this says cement. So it was and here cement here in Polish. So it was a building construction supplies, and you know what we were talking about when we stood there is like, you know, if you peeled off the plaster of many of these buildings, you would find more of this. So it's all there. You know, the signs of the times of the past, of the Jewish communities of the past, is all there. It's just all covered up. It's a bit like an archaeological dig. And so the local community, the local Jewish community asked the owners of this building if they would leave this section of the building unplastered, so it could stand as a you know, a piece of the history of the town, and they agreed. So this is now how the building looks, which is quite extraordinary. And you know, people are not saying no; they are supporting this you know, sort of revival or rediscovery of the Jewish past. So Menachem Begin, in recent years, he was born and went to school in Brest. He was running the Beitar Zionist movement there as a young man, and so he is immortalized there and can be found in a little square behind the cinema I just showed you. So coming back to what the Together Plan does, we're preserving the past, we're building the future. Everything we do at the Together Plan supports our mission. So I'm just going to run you very quickly through our other projects. We send humanitarian aid. We have a group of youth ambassadors around the world under the brand of Youth for Youth. We translate books. We have an archive services. We have a project called Making History Together, with, as you can see, preservation of memorials and sites, and a heritage route through Belarus. So just very quickly to buzz you through that, we send humanitarian aid. This is donations of clothes and shoes and toys and Judaica that get packed and sorted by a group of volunteers in London, and we send on lorries to communities around the country. And actually we're loading a lorry on Tuesday, so if you keep an eye on Facebook, you'll see pictures because I'll be posting. So this is a great lifeline, and it enables us to get all sorts of you know, vital needs, even furniture, to community centres so that we can do the work that we do. So this is just a few of our youth ambassadors. This was taken in the UK. This is taken in Belarus. Well, before the pandemic, we were running summer programs. This was our 2018 summer program, bringing youth from the UK and Belarus together, a sort of peer-led program. So there's me, there's Artur, but we're now connecting to more people from across the globe. So, you know, everybody is welcome into Youth for Youth. It's a virtual Jewish youth club, essentially, with a focus on, I mean, it's changing because of Zoom and the pandemic, we've got more people coming in. So it's very exciting to have all these connections. In fact, in the last week, we made a connection to a 16-year-old in Mexico who says she doesn't really have a community there. She's now part of this community, and her family came from Druria in the north of Belarus. So she's loving being part of this. We run an archive search service to help people find their records in the archives in Belarus, because everything we find also informs the route that we're building, and I'll come on to that. And it connects us to people. So we offer a fully bespoke professional archive service with a dedicated team of experienced archivists to help, and we are helping people to find records, and we've helped people find records going back to, I think the earliest is 1740. So before 1917, there are quite a lot of records to be found. After 1917, there are records, but it's sketchier. And we say that it's all in our FAQs. We have created a program called Making History Together for bar mitzvah age children, and it's a program with doorstep drops. We have physical packs that we send to kids with secret envelopes with hidden history about the partisans, about what happened to the Jews of Belarus. It's a story that's very little told. And we have a parallel program running in Belarus as well. So this is young people discovering the Jewish history of their own country. And for most people, it's not known. There is no official Holocaust education in the country. So this is a real step change towards creating something locally in Belarus, as well as teaching people a wider zoomed out story of the Holocaust, because it didn't all happen in Poland and Western Europe. 2.7 million Jews were murdered in the Soviet Union out of the 6 million that we talk about, and we don't talk about it enough. So this is a program that we've created. We are translating books. This is our first book, We Remember Lest the World Forget. It's 27 memories of survivors of the Minsk ghetto. This is Frida when she was a child. She escaped the ghetto, and this is her now. And she's just celebrated with Artur her 86th birthday. This is really the first book of survivors' memories about the Minsk ghetto. Over 100,000 Jews perished in the ghetto. And those who survived the ghetto were those who escaped and got to the partisans. It's a whole story that really needs to be talked about, and we're now currently working on 2 more books about the Minsk ghetto. Hopefully we'll be in publication within the next 6 months, we're hoping. So watch this space. And another project that we are now currently at the early stages of discussing is another cemetery. This is Minsk. This is the Jewish cemetery in Minsk was within the walls of the ghetto. Well, walls, it was a barbed wire ghetto, but was within the territory of the Minsk ghetto. This is essentially what is there. The headstones, when the park was being turned into a park, when the area was being turned into a park, headstones were found, and the local Jewish community said, we don't want you to get rid of these headstones, and so they were essentially just left here. And this is a sort of an installation, which we feel is it's not really very fitting to talk about the richness of the Jewish community of Minsk. Minsk was ostensibly over 50% Jewish at one point, and has a very big story to tell. The authorities have allowed for this sort of semicircle of memorials to be put here, but it's just not enough. And this whole area, which is a park, is not marked as a cemetery. It doesn't tell any story. There are no information boards. So Artur is doing a big piece of work at the moment to discuss with the local authorities about making this much more of a significant Jewish cemetery memorial site. We've just raised money for a bench, which will be installed in the name of one of the survivors, but we're hoping there'll be many more to follow, including the planting of trees in the names of the resistance, people in the resistance who helped Jews to escape the ghetto. So this is a whole new piece and whole new project that we're discussing at the moment. And here you can see some of the veterans and the survivors. This is Frida here, planting some trees to mark the beginning of the conversation, and we're hoping that more will follow. So this is the start. And the college that we are working with for the Making History Together program are very much behind this. And actually, the person here whose arm you can see who's taking this photograph is the principal of the college, where we're running our Making History Together program. So they're very much on side with that as well. And he's not Jewish, and the children who are in that program are not Jewish either. So it's again, very reassuring. We're also building a Jewish cultural heritage route through the country. We are a member of an organization called the European Association for the Preservation and Promotion of Jewish Culture and Heritage. They're based in Barcelona, and they are the umbrella organization who are leading the charge of building the European route of Jewish heritage, which is one of the 40 routes of the Council of Europe, 40 cultural routes of the Council of Europe. And we are the route builders in Belarus. And we are collaborating with an organization in Amsterdam called the Jewish Heritage Network, who are a digital platform. So we are building a digital repository of images, of, like, for example, the pictures that I've shown you here will all be in the library, which will be creating the imagery for the route. And there is an organization called World Jewish Travel, who are it's a sort of travel guide to Jewish travels around the world, and we're currently working with them as well to upload our route as it evolves, so that people wanting to travel to Belarus when there aren't sanctions and when there's no COVID will be able to find the route through them. So this is sort of an overview of us, showing what we do, everything I've just talked to you about, the Making History Together, taking the digitization, the Youth for Youth, the archive services, the Aid Together, the book translating, reviving community life, putting Jewish Belarus back on the world map, which is building community around history, heritage and identity. We're enabling young adults to start heritage clubs in Belarus. We're unlocking the past, which defines modern history and informs the cultural route. We're providing resources to communities and in-kind support through the AID project, which builds trust with people and partners and the authorities, and also creates volunteering opportunities. We're empowering those who suffered and survived with the memory books. And we're educating young people in the UK and Belarus and bringing research to our cultural route. Essentially, in a nutshell, that is more or less it. So if you have any questions, fire away.
Has there been any pushback? I mean, obviously the community, it sounds like both the Jewish and the non-Jewish community seem to be very open to this and welcoming, but has there been any negative reactions? What's the kind of far right scene in Belarus doing at the moment?
So, do you want to answer that?
I mean, far right Jewish communities, or far right government, or far right?
Well, you know, the rabid anti-Semite crowd that is everywhere. So, you know, borderline Nazis that think we're all trying to take over the world.
Well, I don't think that.
Sorry, I was just going to say we've even got them here. So.
No, I think the life in this part of the world is quite different than the life in your part of the world. You know, we haven't got any Nazi groups. We haven't got any Nazi movements. There is no opposition to developing the heritage, not just the Jewish heritage. I mean, we do have bureaucracy. We do have the Jewish organizations, like a big organizations that are trying to monopolize everything. And I think that those are the most unhappy ones.
Okay, that's interesting.
But I think that neither the government or anyone else among the local Jewish communities, they're unhappy. They're quite happy. The government is quite cooperative, and we even had a huge breakthrough since the Soviet Union. There is a couple of places of the massive execution in the country, which you might have heard of. One is Trostinets, just outside of the capital Minsk, where over 256,000 people were executed, mostly Jews from the ghetto and from the area. There is another one called Brunner, which is right outside of Brest, where all the Brest region Jews and Jews from the Brest ghetto were taken and killed, around 50,000. And in this part of the world, I'm talking about Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, It's always been, and I'm sure you know that, and you've seen on the monuments and memorials, Soviet citizens or peaceful citizens.
Yes.
And we currently had the place Bronная Gora, which is in the forest, has been by the General Prosecutor's Office, has been investigated, and the status has been changed. And now this is the place of the massive execution of the Jewish population officially. And the government is now gathering a committee, which we are, as NGO, invited to join. And there will be sort of a reconstruction and renovation of the place, and there will be changes. There will be, the roads are going to be changed, the area is going to be more accessible. So I have to say that things are changing currently in a positive direction in this country.
Awesome. Good to hear.
I have to say that you know, one of the reasons why we send the humanitarian aid, apart from, you know, getting all the resources and you know, getting things to people that need it, is we share it with the non-Jewish community as well. We have a partner organization in the country, and so we called the Association of Families with Many Children, and so part of the aid goes to you know, very needy families, you know, families in need across the country, which is well recognized and well known. And so that's a really important thing. So we're not just sort of sending aid to give to the Jewish communities, you know, we're not just looking after our own, so to speak. We're making sure that, you know, it gets out to the wider communities as well. And that goes down very well. And it's, you've got to sort of always have that in mind, and that really helps as well.
Because the Jewish community, often Jewish organizations, that they forget that they are part of the general community and general society. And that sometimes, you know, the big sort of organizations, they try to do everything, you know, for the Jews, but they forget that we are a part of the general population. So we have to be open, and the society has to be tolerant. And I think we are doing a much better job in this, where a lot of most of our projects, I would say probably all of them, involves non-Jewish community, a general community, government, and that builds much more tolerant society rather than just keeping to yourself and isolate the Jewish community.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, okay.
Debra, where do you get your funding from? Is it public, or how does it work?
So it's a very good question. I mean, we're managing to do it quite a lot as a very tiny charity. We rely on generosity of donors, you know, personal donors. You know, it's usually people who have a connection to the country, or, you know, have their ancestry, which is why the archives work is very important, because when people they find out that we can help them, and, you know, we're a charity, then, you know, we ask them if would they be willing to make a donation to us. We have a few small grants that we get regularly, you know, annually. So we, you know, they're very important. We have a very great partnership with a charity in the UK called Jewish Child's Day, who are sponsoring our Making History Together program, and also give us grants for our youth work in the country, which is, you know, they're a fantastic partner. They've been with us really since the beginning. We have a generous donor in the States, and we know that there are a lot of Belarusians, people with Belarusian ancestry in America, and so as a result, we've set up an American sister charity. It's not running yet. We're just waiting for it to be approved with the IRS. But then we're hoping that we'll be able to open up the American donor base to continue. But as you can see, we're here and we're serious, and we're not going away. So, you know, we decide, you know, if we're going to do this, to do this properly. And we do find more and more people in the States, particularly over the last year because of COVID, and we were on Zoom. We've made connections to people in the States who are really intrigued and interested, but they always say, do you have a 501 status, which is the charitable status in the States? And we have got a charitable organization who will take donations for us, but we can't have a presence, we can't have our own brand or, you know, exist in America. So that's where we're taking things.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Can I ask, with that research service, so you don't charge for that up front, you just ask for a donation?
No, that is a service we do charge for. So,
okay, good.
And it's bespoke, and people, no, so that's not charitable. That is a charged for service.
Yeah.
We have a team of caseworkers who are currently based in the UK, or we may have another one coming on board from the States, who will sort of deal with the inquiries as they come in. Then we have somebody in the Minsk office with Artur, who is Vasily, who is the sort of the in-between step. So the inquiries then go to him, and they go to the archivist. We've got, I think, 8 archivists now, Artur. How many archivists have we got? Yeah, around the country who do the work, and it's there's a whole system to it. So anybody who lands on the archive page can sort of read how it works. And you get quotes for the work. It's quite an intense piece of work.
Yeah, no, it's good. We're in the process of redoing some literature about stuff, so I'll make a note to put a link and make a note that it's a paid for service.
Yeah.
Sorry, Eli, you have a question.
Okay.
There we go.
You hear me? Okay. First of all, make a quick statement. I don't know how many of you are aware, but Lithuania have appointed their first ever ambassador to Australia. He's sitting in a hotel in Melbourne at the moment. He'll be finished, I think, on Friday. So that is a big, for a small country like Lithuania, and Belarus is the same kind of situation. I think one of my experiences, I've been to Belarus 3 times, Lithuania 11 times, is the amount of people with heritage from those countries that are connected. Now, many of them are South African Litvaks. As you know, Belarus had a lot of people that landed up in South Africa, as did Lithuania. Lithuania, 95% of South African Jews are Litvaks. In Australia, when you live in Australia, I live in Perth, so I'm not in the eastern states. There's this whole situation where if you're not Polish and you're not Hungarian, you're not a Galiciano, you're nobody, okay? So I would believe, that's just my perception. I believe that one of the things that you have to do is PR, okay, and connect with the Australian Jewish population, and especially the ones that have connections with Belarus. Now, you'd be amazed how many people do, including, I'm saying, the people, South Africans, whose family came from Slonim, Mir, Grodno, all these towns that we're talking about, okay, and they're smaller towns, they're not Minsk. So I think that's one of the efforts. You need to be a bit more inclusive with people out there in the diaspora of Belarus. And so 2 years ago, when I went to the Bielski connection, in other words, the reunion of the Bielskis, I'm not a Bielski, but it was the most amazing event in the forest of Naliboki, because people connected. Many of them came from Israel and from America. And what's happened in Lithuania is a lot of those kind of people are establishing memorials in the towns. Now, you may say, well, we want to control it. So my gist is you've got to connect with those of Belarusian, but in our perspective, Litvak Belarusian heritage that are in Australia. So I'm saying to you, in Australia, the environment, Litvak doesn't come into play virtually in my world, because it's very much about the Polish and Hungarian Holocaust, Melbourne and Sydney. So there will be a change. You'll see that Darius Dogutis and his wife, he was the ambassador to Israel and to South Africa before. And I think that's one of the things. Unfortunately, Belarus is not part of the EU. You've got a dictator who runs your country. He may be benevolent to you, but those are some of the issues that you have to look at as well, to engage the people from these countries like Australia who've got connections with Belarus.
No, you're absolutely right, and we are doing that. Although it's, we're very, very small, we're growing now, and so there's it takes time to do all of that. We do have connections to people. You have Kogans, don't you, in Australia? Kogans, is it Kogan?
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. So I think it's Ruslan Kogan.
Yeah.
He's from Bobrusk. Belarus, so if anyone knows him, tell him about us. We are. I mean, Stephen Greinberg, who was in the presentation, who's supporting the Headstones project in Brest. He has family, or he has connections. Sorry, not family. He has connections to people in Melbourne who we're in touch with. So we are talking to people, and it's. they're far away. We on our YouTube channel, there are lots of films. One of them is an interview with a chap called Sam Webb, who came back to Belarus after 82 years. He said he would never, and he's from Brest, said he would never go back because he said the anti-Semitism was absolutely horrific. And we interviewed him for our Making History Together program. His interview is on our YouTube channel. It's a half-an-hour interview, it's well worth watching. We've also got a film of him, also Artur got it onto the television, of when he did go back after 82 years. So, and his family are in Melbourne. So we are making those connections, and we are to people in South Africa. It's just, all of that takes a lot of time to bring, that. I mean, with your sites, and you're fantastic. You really help with that. But you're absolutely right. And hoping that, when the world slightly goes in a slightly better direction and there isn't so much COVID and you can travel, well, to Belarus, we will definitely be taking people. That's the whole point of the route, that people will come.
So if I can just follow up just quickly. So the best example in a way are people who are involved with the museum, the Lost Shtetl of Shadova. So all about that, and there's big money and there's big deals going on there. And that's something that the Lithuanian government were actually very involved with. So this ambassador that's now here in Australia was part of that deal, okay? Then you get a place like Brest or Belarus, and you see that many people come together from all over the world and they build the most amazing memorial. Inclusive.
May I also say something?
I'm not finished. Hold on. Okay. So I'm saying, sorry, I'm just saying to you that you need to, let me finish. You need to be inclusive. In other words, to be an organization and not get people in the diaspora involved, you're not being inclusive. That's what I'm saying. And the Lithuanian example is the best example of that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Could
Brian,
I say something now? Yeah.
Absolutely, Brian, please.
Yeah, I fully support what Eli said, and I understand he's in Melbourne and I'm in Sydney.
You're
in Perth. I was born in Perth, so that's good. I think I live in Sydney, and my wife and I visited the area, Lithuania, a few years ago, and I fully support what you're doing, and I'd be happy to work with you, Eli, on let's call it doing something to get some level of awareness and action and involvement from the many Australian Jews who have connections with Lithuania and Belarus. Yeah.
That would be amazing. You're absolutely. That would be fantastic to have some ambassadors in your part of the world. One of the things I would say is that in with what you're saying, you're not wrong, Eli. You're absolutely right. But Artur and I are up against one issue, is that, and this is what we're trying to do, we're trying to build up our credibility and give people the confidence that we are very fully transparent and we do everything with due diligence and good governance, because in Belarus, Lithuania is in the EU, whatever the EU is, right? The UK is now Brexited, God help us. So, now we've got Belarus, which is outside of the EU. We've got the UK, which is outside of the EU. And we've worked really hard to come to this point. And we want to, we are, saving the heritage for the community. So for example, give you a very good example, the Rothschild Foundation, which I'm sure you've all heard of, are giving, lots of money to these sorts of projects, heritage projects, digitization work. It's like everybody says to us, well, you should be going to the Rothschild Foundation. Artur and I spent about an hour and a half, I think, reading through all of the terms and conditions of the Rothschild Foundation's grant application, because we were convinced that this would be absolutely right for us. When you get to the last page, we read it really clearly, went, yep, we're a tick, yes, we're a tick, yes, we're a tick. Surely we can apply. Last page, it says we do not give money to Belarus. So we spent hour and a half, we will never get that hour and a half back of our lives. Why they don't put it at the top of the application and say, don't read this if you're doing anything in Belarus. But no, we took it very seriously. And, you know, people have said to us, well, we need to kind of go knocking on the door of the Rothschild Foundation, but it's a fortress. And honestly, it's very, very difficult. So you're not wrong. And, you know, if we were in Lithuania, we would have a little bit more, you know, kudos, because we would be in the EU and people would we would tick those boxes, but we're not. So actually, we're in a very difficult, from a fundraising point of view, we've had to work very, very hard to show people that what we do is what we do, and we're fully transparent, and there is an outcome.
Good civil society exercise as well in a country that, you know, may not have fully democratic norms. It's a opportunity to completely, you know, model at least liberal civil society organizations. I have one very quick question, just a practical question. With the digitization program for the pieces of matzevot, with the database that you're developing, will that be name searchable for people trying to find remnants of family history of maybe people, if they've traced their family to Brest? Will, you know, once this database is indexed and everything, will it be possible to find the names that are surviving and readable? Will it be possible to do name searches, or you're not sure at this stage?
I don't think we can answer that at this stage, because we haven't got any of the translations yet. It's literally just being done now.
Right, okay.
And I think it would be wrong of me to say, oh yeah, absolutely, when actually, you know, the way we just don't know. And, you know, these things are Jewish headstones, as you know. It will possibly, you know, it will say, you know, a name in, you know, that, you know, it'll have a Hebrew date where it can be read. I think we have to go on the journey and see what we discover and what we're able to give people, because we don't know. All we know is what we'll be able to read, and then people will be able to look at that catalogue and see whatever we've been able to pull off those headstones. It's a progress. I'll come back to you.
Kosher Koala will follow you on that journey.
Absolutely, thank you.
If I can just say something else, it's also about talking about things, you know, publishing and sharing information and so on. Because the first time I went there in 2012 was a nightmare. I went from Warsaw to Brest and to get across the border, etc. And the visas were impossible. And the last time we went there 2 years ago, it was fairly easy. You got a visa at Minsk Airport and it didn't cost you anything, right? So there's all these kind of things that have improved. And I think we need to look, unfortunately, we've gone through a bad stage with international travel. But I think once we're back to normal, you should encourage people, through people like myself and, you know, the Kajukola and the Lennies and so on, is to come to Belarus, because I found it a very pleasant place to come to. And you know what, you can be very intimidated by the country, by what you read about it. But, you know, I rented a car at the airport and I drove to Pinsk, which was 4.5 hours. And I met with the most delightful, you know, the rabbi over there, delightful guy. Yes.
Yeah.
And I played him. It's a very pleasant place to go to. I think Australia is very far away, but people need to just feel more comfortable by reading articles, you know, speaking to people like myself.
Sign up to our newsletter, and you'll get our articles, and you can immerse yourself in what we're doing and feel very connected, because we write a newsletter every month. And
so, I'm not selling anything, but the first time I went to Belarus, I went to Brest, as I told you. I took a picture of a matzevot, okay, amongst that rubble, okay? And this thing was on the second version of the Yiscor book, okay? My picture of a matzevot. So you know what? It's just a matter of making efforts, going to a place, talking about it, connecting with families, and you'll see that it will start happening. Just got to be patient, that's all.
Mm. Can I just tell you something? This is a book. I don't know, you can't see it.
Yeah, you can see it.
Book here. It's a cultural roots management. It's the theory that we have to study to build a cultural route. And it's created by the Council of Europe. It's a big, thick book. The first page, I mean, I opened it to the first page. It says the Council of Europe is not only the oldest European international organization founded in May 1949, it is also the most European. The 47 member states cover the whole continent, including countries which span Europe and Asia like Azerbaijan, Georgia, Russia, and Turkey. The only gap in this rich and fertile patchwork of peoples and cultures is Belarus.
Yeah. Well, you got riches like Tamara Vyshitskaya
She's part of our team now. I mean, she's now part of our team. So Tamara Vyshitskaya has been, she's the voice of the partisans, and she, is the expert there, and she's now part of our team.
But you need, without mentioning names, you need some of your people in England who have strong roots and have actually done very well out of their stories about Belarus, you know who I'm talking about, to come out and be a little bit more proactive and give more of their time to your country, to Belarus, because their roots and my roots are from Belarus. Okay.
No, you're not
and
wrong.
they're very up themselves sometimes, and you know what, you can't get a point. I'm sure you deal with that all day long. Unfortunately.
You're not wrong. You got it.
Yeah. Well, Aussies are good. Aussies are good. So we'll help you.
I know. I love being in this forum.
Deborah, I can't thank you enough. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you join us. If there are any other questions, speak up, please. No.
You're very welcome to contact us. Please do contact us.
Thank
Sylvia,
you so much.
and Eli, please, let's be in touch. Let's get it. Let's do it. Let's be active.
And
I'll keep an eye on what you're doing and keep doing updates. So
and just one simple thing, to get from Minsk to Tel Aviv is very easy and very quick and pretty cheap. So you know what, it's not difficult to go to Israel and to go there afterwards. They're just going to let us in. And my guy's going to let me out.
So one last comment to those.
If you want to travel to Belarus now, you can actually do it, I think, via Israel. Is that right, Artur? Israel is flying to
Israel, via Turkey. No, you can travel to Belarus via Lithuania, Poland.
On the train. You can't fly in, Artur. You're unsanctioned.
No, you can't.
Not from Lithuania. On the train you can, yeah.
One last comment for all of those people who are online. If you'd like to look up Kosher Koala, on the genealogical website, you'll find that there's already been an article about this program and in fact, the wonderful work that these people are doing. We want to thank everybody for coming today, and thank you for particularly getting up so early on a Sunday morning for us to join us and to be a part of this. We really, really appreciate you doing that, and hope we can do it again soon for an update session that will tell us how you've progressed with it over the time.
Absolutely. It's a privilege. Thank you for having us.